I'm your host, Reena Friedman Watts, and this is the Better Call Daddy Show.
Hey, this is Big Daddy, Wayne Friedman.
That's my grandpa. Grandpa, you ready for more daddy drama?
My dad is my number one hero and number one fan.
And I'm a pretty cool dude.
All right, season 4, baby. Here we go.
More stories you're not going to believe.
And maybe you will after you listen.
5 stars.
5.5 stars, 2 thumbs up.
You are a pretty cool dude.
I love you, Mommy.
Don't stand on the table and damn the public. You'll get some words of wisdom to live by.
Here we go again. Better call Daddy.
You know what your problem is? You like me.
Yeah, I do. Each week, I interview a guest, share the stories with my dad, and then he weighs in at the end of every episode with his wisdom and wit.
Hey, Grandpa.
Everyone from influential players to inspirational fathers, and of course, controversial people.
Grandpa, my mom is calling.
Creating that legacy one call at a time. And welcome to the Better Call Daddy Show.
Stay tuned.
Where's the music?
Better call Daddy cause he knows you best. Better call Daddy cause he's bringing the test. He sees possibilities. Ooh, better call Daddy, he'll be by your side. Better call Daddy, you're the apple of his eye. He sees possibilities. All to complete.
Today's guest is calm, collected, and risen above. She is the author of Out of the Shadows, My Life Inside the World of Hunter Biden. Today, she's coming to the Better Call Daddy Show as a regular person, and she is telling her story in her own way. Lunden Roberts, welcome to the Better Call Daddy Show. Oh my gosh, you've done some big interviews.
Yes, it's been pretty nerve-wracking, to say the least.
Yeah, I think I would be nervous.
Oh, absolutely. My anxiety is through the roof.
Oh my gosh. Well, one, I just want to say I read every page of your book and I found it to be extremely relatable.
Really?
And yeah.
Well, good. Well,
very brave.
Thank you.
I guess my first question is do you feel like you were harsh enough in what you wrote? I mean, I know you wanted Hunter Biden to understand what you went through, but I felt like you were really nice to him in that book.
Yes. And that's the thing. I felt like I humanized him. And, I showed somebody, what made me fall in love with him, traits that, I empathized and everything else. And there's so much out there that my daughter's going to see someday on the internet. And it's like, what greater gift can I give her than this book that shows my side of things for her? The woman that raised her, the woman that she knows and has nurtured her and, taught her the values and morals of life. And I don't feel like it was, a bash to him in any way.
It wasn't, for sure not.
And so many people are like, could you have been harsher? And I think I'm pretty raw in the book with my emotions. In the beginning, there's that relationship with him and how I fall for him. And then there's, that resentment and that hate that I built against him because you're, not acknowledging this perfect human being that we created. And then, then there's that hurt and there's so many emotions, that go through this entire journey. And I think that I was really raw with it. I talk about mental health and the place that I'd gotten into with, suicide and suicidal thoughts. And not only had I never written about it, I'd never spoke about that out loud. And this actually, even came to a shock to my family. They were just like, we had no clue that you were at this point in your life. And I hadn't opened up to anybody about anything. So I think the book is, I think it's pretty raw. And I think I was pretty open with all my emotions and how I felt and, what I hoped for and just everything I could be. I think to say, do I wish I could have been harsher? I think there were some pretty harsh moments where, I call him some names and I say some things that, he's probably not real happy with, but I don't care. It's the raw honesty of the book. And that, that's what I pride myself on.
It was really well done. And since you brought up your family, I have a show here with my dad. You say in the book that you are your father's daughter. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. So my dad's really big in the hunting industry, and he has built his business from the ground up. And it's one that, like, if you're watching the Outdoor Channel for 24 hours, you'll see my dad's business. You'll see my dad's face. He's on these different hunts, and so many people, and his personality, he's just, to know him is to love him. He's crazy and wild, and all his friends are like these country music singers, and he's somebody that I've always looked up to. And, he's been very influential in my life. He's always, been the type of guy that empathized for people and, did the right thing, even if that's the hardest thing to do. And I watched him do that even at times he was struggling during our childhood. And now to see him, thrive and be so successful and something that he loves doing, he's been an inspiration. And from the beginning, I have a sister, it's me and her, and I'm the only one that, like, would go hunting with him. Brandy Jo, like, she wouldn't even want to kill a squirrel. If she ran over one, she'd have to stop and cry. Like, she couldn't do that, the hunting stuff. And so, me and my dad always shared that. And we'll go on duck hunts and turkey hunts, and I still enjoy it. And I actually had someone tell me the other day, what are you doing such and such week? And I was like, oh, that's deer season. And they're like, okay. And I was like, no, what you don't understand is, like, as we're getting older, our parents are getting older too. And something, hunting with my dad is something I've done since I was my daughter's age, even if I just go sit in the stand with him and he was hunting. But, he's getting older, and you never know when will be their last hunting season. And I don't want to take advantage of that. But my dad is probably the greatest influence in my life. And, he's well known in the area. He's well known in the hunting industry. And, in this area, everybody knows this is Rob's daughters.
That's so interesting. It's kind of funny that, hunting has been a part of your life and then you ended up with a hunter.
Yeah. How about that?
Crazy. Also, like, your DC chapter reminded me of, like, when I moved to LA in my 20s. Like, that honestly sounded like the time of your life. I mean, can you talk a little bit about moving there with kind of stars in your eyes?
Oh, yeah. I've talked so much about coming from this rural place, Arkansas, and just the other day I was talking to somebody and I was like, I never had seen, like, cocaine until I moved to DC. I had never experienced this crazy, fun party lifestyle. I was strictly basketball and books, and church. That's all we practically did growing up. And then you get to DC and, like, there's people walking down the street smoking weed. And it's like, what? It's crazy because that was like the devil's drug when I was in high school. Oh my God, I can't believe, this is so normal. And it was like a culture shock. I just never experienced it. And it was so fun because nobody knows you. Nobody knows you as Rob. You're not Rob's daughter anymore. You are, but you're not. They don't know you as Rob's daughter. And so you get to just build this whole persona for yourself and be who you want to be with no judgments, no stones being thrown at you. Like, because, small town, if you have a drunk night, the entire town will, be crucifying you the next day. That's how it is in the Bible Belt of the South. But living in DC was just, I talk about it larger than life. Like, it's this luxurious lifestyle. But I was telling someone along the process of the book, they were talking about, how do you make the reader see that you left this luxurious lifestyle and then you end it with, like, you're just a mother? And I was like, well, do you have children? And she's like, no. And I was like, then you wouldn't get it, because the reward of being a mother is greater than any of the luxuries and the fun times had or whatever's been gone through. Like, the real luxury in life is becoming a mother. Like, that's the reward. That's the way to end the book. Like, that's what I want. And they just, like, didn't quite understand it, and I get that if you've not experienced that love, which my mom always told me growing up, you'll never understand until you have a kid for your own. I was like, oh, whatever. But it's true. Like, the real reward is being a mother and finding that love.
It's crazy, though, because I'm a mom of 4. So
wow.
I do get, the love of a child, but also, you had this, like, exciting chapter and it was kind of cut short.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you have found that Navy is your purpose, I want to give you big props for, because you are a mom and a dad. And yes, you do have like your parents to fall back on. But I feel like just not everybody, like you said, can fully understand that. Like, I feel like my mom had me young. I grew up in Kentucky. Literally, she got pregnant with me at 18. My parents stayed together. But to be perfectly honest, there was some resentment there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like you have that. I mean, maybe it will develop.
Resentment, like towards Hunter?
Or just like having to do so much as a mom and kind of like cutting your own childhood, 20s, good times, like pursuing your own dreams short thing.
I get that. But no, there really isn't that resentment. I feel, what I did in the years that I spent in DC are some people won't ever experience, that
True.
much fun and those many wild, crazy times that, I get to live to talk about. And had I carried on with that lifestyle, who knows if I would have been able to live to tell those stories. But here I am. So no, I don't feel like I have that resentment at all. I'm definitely not ashamed. I'm proud of that time. It helped mold me into who I am. And had I not went through those crazy, wild party days, I wouldn't have Navy.
So, do you think that's, though, like your claim to fame now? Or do you think that was a wonderful chapter and I get to tell that tale, but for you, like being a mom is like your purpose?
I think for me, being a mom is like my purpose. I think that I always say it's, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but when you meet somebody and you'll meet, different people and have different relationships, why I think God meant for it to happen between me and Hunter. I think that God wanted my story to be told, and I think that my story could help other people. I don't claim the fame or anything that comes with it. I'm simply a mother, and I'm simply just telling my story in hopes that, I can help somebody that finds themselves, in that dark place, or loving an addict and having to find that grace to give them. Because I was telling someone the other day, it's like what someone does to you when they're an addict isn't exactly who they are, because, that person changes and shifts and has to go through several different things. And you can't truly understand it until you see it front row or you're experiencing it. And I think that there's so many things throughout the book you could learn from, like from the loving an addict to the mental health aspect to the trials and tribulations that I went through throughout court and, fighting for my daughter and being her voice, and then ultimately just loving her and being the best mother that I can be, the best dad I can be, the best all around individual that I can be that she needs. And I know that, I have no doubts that one day she has endless potential and she will move mountains, and want to help her get there. She's my purpose, and I'm going to help her be some superhero someday. You'll read about her someday doing something absolutely marvelous. I have no doubt.
That's amazing. Well, I agree with you there. You just mentioned that he's an addict and addicts aren't like who you think they are. There was a point, I think, in your interview with Megyn Kelly where you were talking about, did this really happen? Like, do you even remember this happened? Because he was denying it.
So we had a mutual friend that was with us a lot. You'll read throughout, what is she in the book? Kelsey in the book. So I have to be careful because a lot of times I'll slip up and say their real name, and I have. But so, she was around us a lot. And yeah, with him just like generally denying and like just like throwing it aside, claiming to have no recollection of me. And I'm just like, this is like the biggest public gaslight of all time. What is going on? And so I call her and I'm like, did I make this up? Am I crazy? And she's like, first of all, no. Like, look at your kid. Like, she definitely came from him. And so it was crazy for me because it seemed just surreal. One, that you go from this private life to now that life is just being thrown out to the public. And so you're dealing with all the anxiety and animosity that comes with it, because so many people feel like they need to give you their opinion, whether it's negative or positive. And they will find you, no matter if you're disguised on social media or wherever you are, they will find you to tell you their opinion. And so it was a lot to take on mentally, because it's like, I'm just fighting for my daughter and wanting her father to not only acknowledge her, but take responsibility, take accountability, and, stop brushing it off like this didn't happen when it did, and try to make me look crazy. And so it was a lot of it. No, my friends, like they used to laugh about that. They're like, now I'm worried about your mental health. You're questioning if this happened. What is wrong with you?
Are you like, yeah, in an alternate universe? But another thing, too, that you mentioned was you had 2 cell phones because one didn't work in a certain city. It didn't work in D.C. or it didn't work.
Right. Well, it worked in D.C. It was the area that I lived in, and I had like a basement apartment, and it didn't have like Wi-Fi calling and all this other stuff. And it was a crazy mess. So I ended up going to Sprint and getting a phone. And so I had 2, AT&T and Sprint, or AT&T and Verizon. I can't remember. I don't know what I have now. So it was 2 different, networks. And the other one worked better for where I lived in DC. But the day that I found out I was pregnant, and I had talked to my sister on the phone, which that was one of the first phone calls I made. And it was just like, after that, both phones just mysteriously crashed. And I probably would not have told this story had I not had witnesses, because it's like one of those, nobody is going to believe you. But my friend my phones are sitting on a stool, and my friend's like, London, what's wrong with your phone? And then the other one does it. And I'm like, and we're all, and, they both knew the situation that I was in. They had been with me, since I had taken the pregnancy test. And we're just like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And however, I was starting to feel like my own conspiracy. Like, I don't know what is going on. And if somebody, is it a coincidence, or did somebody just mysteriously wipe my phones, and then I had nothing on them? And then if they were doing that to protect him, how far would they go to protect him? So I was just like, it was scary. It was very scary, a very scary time.
But good thing you know your way around protecting yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I stay armed. And I came home. I came home to Arkansas, where I knew, being up under my dad, and I moved back in with them, I knew that, I'd be protected. And they would look out, my mom and dad would look out for me in any way possible, and Navy. And they have. And my dad, I'm sure you read about Rambo Pappy showing up at the door. Like, he don't play when it comes to me or Navy. He doesn't. He's our protector.
I wanted to ask you what he thought of your DC chapter, because that is much different than how you grew up. And like, you worked at a strip club. Like, was he cool with that?
So they know everything. I told them everything, but like I told you earlier, like, I didn't talk about suicide or anything like that. Nobody knew about it until
your
the book.
dad. Oh my God. How did he react to that?
So my mom and my dad, I gave them 2 of the first copies. I gave Navy the very first copy I received. I gave that, of course, to her. And I've got a little drawer in the guest room and stuff that I keep away, like little keepsakes that I keep for her when she gets older. And so I wrote in there, this is the very first copy of the book and all that. And the next 2 were to my mom and dad. And I gave it to them. I wrote them a little something. And both of them have chosen not to read it.
Really?
And I totally respect it. I totally respect it, because at first I think they were like, I might read it, because I'd given one to my preacher as well. And on one Sunday, he's like, I don't know if y'all have read London's book, but you need to. It talks about feeling alone and stuff like that, and just getting through certain trials and tribulations in life. And he kind of made that comment, and Dad after church was like, well, he said, I wasn't going to read your book. He's got it tucked away in the safe. He's like, I feel like I want to give you that. I want, I feel like I'm invading your privacy. I'm like, Dad, the whole world had this. Like, you're not invading my privacy. It's very public. And he's like, I just wanted to do that. I didn't feel comfortable reading it. That's totally fine. I understand. And then I think my aunts, when they read it, kind of told my mom some things that they had read, like the suicide and things that they didn't know about. And then it was just like, they really didn't want to read it, because I don't think they, as a parent, I understand, because, when your child's heart is broken, or when your child is going through something, you hurt more for them than you would if you were going through it.
Totally.
And so I understand their reservations, and I understand them not wanting to read it. I couldn't imagine if Navy did and was that open and that raw and talked about some of the darkest times of their life. It's hard, I think, as a parent to read. And, I think it's possible that my mom might have regrets as to, how she treated me during the time when I found out I was pregnant out of wedlock. And, that was a whole ordeal. So it's possible, that I'll respect it. I've told them that whether they read it or not, they have it. And whether they choose to read or not, that's on them. I'll respect whatever they decide.
But they know all of pretty much what's in the book, right?
Well, listen, if my aunts know, you can guarantee they know, because they're like chickens just out there squawking. They'll tell everything. So I'm sure they know just about everything in the book.
It's funny because after I read it, my first reaction was, I think she wrote this book for her daughter.
Mm-hmm. I did. The book is solely dedicated to Navy. And, the dedication page is to her. I want her to know that, not only did I climb mountains, her father did too. And no matter what dark place you find yourself in or what corner you feel backed into, that you can overcome that, because she has, and, fearless already runs through her blood. And, now do it justice. It's a quote from Nikita Gill, one of my favorite poets. And I wrote that on the dedication page for her because I want her to have this book. And someday, if I'm not here to tell my story or to tell my side, because the tabloids and
you're like, if I disappear.
Yeah, if by chance something happens to me, I want her to have this, to know that, her mom stood 10 toes down and told her story despite everyone else's narrative that was placed on me. I want her to know the truth. I want her to know the ins and the outs. And I want her to have that, because I've told people before, I can't imagine the day that Navy is old enough to search the internet, what she will read about her mom and her dad and all these leaked photos, of that are hard for me to see of Hunter. I can't imagine, being his own blood, his daughter, and seeing that. And I want her to know that she comes from a place of love, and that there is good in there, that she comes from so much, and resilience, strength, grace, forgiving, respectful, kind, and honest. I want her to have all these traits. And how can I expect her to have these traits and instill these traits in her if I can't carry them myself and show them to her? And so I think the book was a big way in doing that and showing her, how much I love her, the place that she comes from, and what I'm willing to go through for her is to the ends of the earth. I would go to fight for her, to love her, and to let her know that despite who chose to be here and despite who chose to show you that love, I hope she never forgets where she came from and who raised her.
I mean, honestly, that is so powerful. It is. And even just showing up in court too, not just the book and all of what you put in it, but like you showing your daughter, like, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. I am going to make sure this is proven. That is a tremendous battle to fight. I wouldn't even know who would know how to navigate that.
Absolutely. It was gut-wrenching. Whichever lawsuit, whether it was the paternity lawsuit or the child support, it was hard. And mothers have to do that all the time, and it's,
yes.
There's so many people that have reached out to me, so many mothers, and they're like, you inspired me to fight for my son or my daughter.
Yes.
And that itself is like, makes it all worthwhile. But can you imagine doing it against one of the most powerful families in the world? It just raises the stakes, and it's so much higher, and there's so much fear and anxiety and everything that mothers go through every day when they're facing that, because they feel like, it's a man's world and he's going to win. But that's not always the case. You can go against the most powerful people in the world, just, stand 10 toes down and fight, and it may just work in your favor.
It's incredible, truthfully. I love an underdog story. I really do.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine. And then too, like the part where you brought the box from your daughter. I mean, I have a kid in kindergarten right now. I know how important their artwork is. It is all over my house. I can't throw any of it away. It is cluttering everywhere.
I've got a whole stack over here by the fridge. If I turn this, you'll see.
God forbid you got to hide it when you throw it away so it doesn't take over your whole house. And then for him to take this package of like this treasure that she's given him, and him to put that down even for a moment.
Oh, that's, and that's one thing I'll never, ever forget is, one, the shaking in my voice is like, because I was so nervous. These are the first words I've spoken to him since I was pregnant and carrying his child. And here I am sitting here and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and I'll never forget. And the reason I'll never forget is because on the hour drive to Little Rock, I probably rehearsed it a million times. And then the 2-3 days prior to, I just keep thinking, what am I going to say? Because, Clinton had told me, I had told my attorney, Clinton, I said I would show up for the deposition because there were certain questions that I wanted answered. And I wanted him to look me in the face and answer those questions. That public gaslighting that we did, look me in the face and say that. And I wanted him to sit there and answer those questions, but off the record, I wanted him to have this from his daughter. I wanted him to know that door was open. And despite the toxic litigation and despite everything that we had gone through, at the end of the day, this is about a child, our child. And I wanted him to also see the strength that I had, because I feel like a coward runs and hides. And I wanted to be there. I wanted to look him in the face, and I wanted to give him something of his daughter that day that he would never forget. And I did. I'll never forget when my attorney says, off the record, we can stop the cameras and stuff. And he's like, my client has something for you. And I'll never forget the look on Hunter's face where he's like got these furrowed brows and he's looking at me and probably expecting me to just tear him a new asshole. But I didn't. And I stood up and I held the box, and I remember my hands were shaking and my voice was shaking. I said, this might not mean anything to you, but it means everything to our daughter. And that's why I'm here today, to give this to you personally. And I just told him, these are some of her drawings, and here's pictures of her. I had printed off my favorite pictures of her in the last 4 or 5 years. And I put it all in a box. And there's even one, she learned to draw. And so she had these colors and she drew her and her dad and as potato heads. And so he is orange. And I was like, really resembles a former president that I don't think he'll hang this painting up. So I'm going to have to write on here. Of course, at the time, she couldn't spell or anything. So I had to write on in quotation marks at the top of it, me and my dad as potato heads by Navy. Because I was like, surely God he'll realize the orange came from the potato. It's not what he thinks. We don't watch the news around here. But, I wanted him to have that. I wanted him to see her personality. I wanted him to see himself in her. I wanted him to see how great and magnificent he was. And most importantly, I wanted him to see what he was missing out on, because he's missed out on a lot.
It's so sad.
It is. It's heartbreaking. And over here, I have a birdhouse that she had painted for him. And she painted it for him months back. And she hasn't spoken to him. He hasn't reached out since the book. And
oh my God.
The other day I come in, I don't know if I could get this over here, but if you can see it, it's on that stool right there. It's now all in pieces.
Oh.
Because, she's upset that he's not reaching out to her, or that she's not able to talk to him. And there's been several times, she's asked, well, can I call my dad? And I was like, well, says he's busy, but he'll reach out. He'll reach out when he's not busy, and then I came in one day and I see her over here and she's kind of taking the house apart. And I'm like, well, sis, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I feel like we should send this to dad, but, I just don't know if he wants it. And I was like, of course he does. Like, I don't care if I have to send this to some random location. As long as she thinks that it's getting sent to him, it will. But I was like, why do you think that? And she's like, I just want to give him a hug. And she talks about how I just want to hear his voice and I just want to talk to him. And, that bond had been building since September. He was Zoom calling her and after we had settled the child support dispute. And
how long did that go on? Because he didn't talk to her for like the first 4 years of her life, right?
Right. And then it was in 23, we settled the child support dispute. And
also, can you talk about what was happening with the rest of the freaking Biden family during that dispute?
I have no idea. They don't ever.
But was it okay? I mean, there's just been so many things in the news, like during this whole thing with you. Like, you found out about him sleeping with his brother's wife, right?
Oh, yeah. That was before I had gotten pregnant.
Okay, that was before you got pregnant.
That's back when him and I had, started seeing each other. And I found out through the tabloids that
is wild.
It is. And, It's crazy because as I sit here and like for the first time, like saying stories out loud and having to give interviews and talk about it, people are like, what? And I'm like, okay, like I get it. I can't even blame it on the fact that I was young, wild, and dumb. Like it doesn't make sense. And people...
You can though. You can. I feel like our worldview is so small in our 20s. It just, so many things happen in your 20s and you're like, I can't believe I did that. Thank God I'm still alive.
I have a lot of those moments. But yeah, I try to blame it on that. But people are like, what? So the first night you meet him, he's doing crack cocaine and
you're like, yeah, in his boxers.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just casually like, yeah, he was standing there in like these parrot boxer briefs, sorting out copper to put in his crack pipe. And everybody's like, listen to you. And I'm like, what? We had a fun night. Like, what do you mean?
It was a party.
Yeah, I fell in love. I know it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But, we lived through those times and gosh, I can look back and talk about how stupid I was and the craziest decisions, but I wouldn't take any of them back. I truly wouldn't because
I can relate though. I mean, honestly, I feel like a lot of women's 20s are like that. I mean, maybe not exactly like that, but we definitely did things in our 20s that you're like, I can't believe I did that, but it was kind of fun. And now I have the story to tell, but I definitely wouldn't want to do that around children.
Oh, absolutely. Most of those parents I would never have wanted to do around children.
And you're like, I'm not sure I want my own daughter to do those things, but I hope she can talk to me about it if she does.
I think, that was hard too, because you're writing this book for your daughter and you want to be raw and you want to be honest. And it was hard to write about Hunter's addiction and had he not been so candid about his addiction, and he'll talk about it. And it was really hard for me in the book to say crack. Like, I didn't like it. I felt like that was disrespectful. And people were just like, you're just going to have to say what it is. And I had to pull up an interview where Hunter talked about his addiction. And he said crack cocaine. He said crack pipe. He said vodka. And he's saying all these words that for whatever reason, I felt like it was disrespectful to say. And I was just like, I'm sure as you probably noticed throughout the book, I talk about it being like this demon that just had its claws sink into him. But I didn't say crack or crack pipe and stuff as much. I've probably said it a few times than I could have. And that part was out of respect. I didn't want to take away from the addiction because that is what it was. And I wanted to shed that light on it and just what a horrible place he was in. But I also wanted to do it in a respectful way, not just for him, but for all addicts. Because I think recovery is hard for addiction. And there's so many things, fortunately, I've never had to go through, but I've seen people suffer with that. And whether you like him or not, it is what it is. He is a recovering addict, and I can't imagine going through what he goes through on the daily as a recovering addict. Most recovering addicts like to recover in peace, and he's having to recover with the spotlight on him. And,
so
all
hard.
The tax indictment and the gun charges, and it's a rough road. And I say, I applaud him for maintaining that sobriety through all that.
Do you wish you could have gotten him to be sober?
No, I think everything played out the way it was supposed to. At one point, yes. At one point, especially when I found out I was pregnant, I thought this is what's going to, he'll get sober and everything will work itself out. But then you just kind of have to realize that that's not God's plan, and he had a different plan. And so everything worked out, the way that it was supposed to.
Did you ever question God about all of this?
Oh, absolutely. When I first found out I'm pregnant, I'm like, why, God? Like, why would you do this? Me and this man, like, and it could have been anybody else in the world. Why? Like, why? And, then I'm blessed with having her, and I'm blessed with this love. And then it's like, why, God? Why was I blessed with such a perfect daughter? Why was I, why did you put me? What did I do to, it goes from like, what did I do to deserve this? To what did I do to deserve this great blessing? It's a different kind of aspect, but it's the same question. What did I do to deserve it in a good light rather than oh God, why me? This can't be the plan. I have a hard time believing that you and I agreed on this before you sent me to earth. But I think it all works out. And I think that, there's several times I think in many people's life where they question God. Or whatever religion they have, they might even question their religion or question, a greater power. And I think that it all plays out. And it's kind of like Navy said the other day. Well, it's probably been months ago now, but she saw Donald Trump on TV. And she said, Mom, is that my grandfather? I was like, no, lower your voice. No, that is not your grandfather. And she's like, okay. I was like, that's Donald Trump. He was a former president. I try to like explain it to her because she knows that her grandfather is the president. And so give or take some days after that, Donald Trump's on TV again. And she's like, Mom, I don't think I'm ever going to meet my grandfather. And I said, you don't? I said, why? She said, well, if he's as busy as that man is, then I'm never going to see him because that guy's everywhere. And so she's pointing at Donald Trump. Well, I start laughing and I'm like, well, sis, all you can do is wait on God's timing and know that the day that you meet him is the day that God wants you to. That's his purpose. And he has it all planned out. It's his plan. And know that if you never meet him, that it's possible God saved you from something bigger that you don't know about. And that was his plan. Maybe it was to teach you something. Maybe it was to teach him something. We don't know. All we can do is go day by day, and what happens, happens, and it all happens under God's plan. And of course, she ends it with, yeah, well, I really, really, I really, really, really want to see. And I said, who's that? And she said, my dad. She said, I just want to give him a hug. And it's always the same thing. She always just wants to see her dad to give him a hug. And I've thought about that multiple times, and everything that he's gone through in the last 6 months, I bet he could use that hug.
I bet he could too. Yeah. And didn't you hug him in court?
Lord, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
Did you knock him out? Yeah.
No, we get to court. The one time that we're actually in court, I did not think that he would show up because he had not yet. I was the only one that kept showing up. But we finally got a judge that there was no funny business. She's strictly business. It's like once she was put on our case, she's like, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, this is what we're going to do. Why has this not been done? Like this, you have 30 days to do this. Like she was all business. And totally, you got to respect that, whether it's on your side or not. If you're in the wrong and she calls you out on it, you got to respect it. And so she was all business, and she made him show up to court. She told him that she did not care if his hair was on fire. He would be in court for his daughter that day, and he showed up. And I was like in shock. I had a full-blown anxiety attack before it. And, you think 24/7 you might be having an anxiety attack when your anxiety gets high. I tell people, you don't know a panic attack until you are looking your trauma in the face. Like, there he is. Eye contact for the first time in 4 years. And we walk into the courtroom, and my attorney Clinton's in front of me. I'm behind him. And then my other attorney, Jennifer, his wife, is behind me. And so I'm like in this Lancaster attorney sandwich. And they walk in, and I expected to go to our bench, but my attorney veers left. So I follow, and he shakes their attorney's hands. And so I follow in line. And then it gets to me and Hunter, and it's like, and I can't tell you the look I had on my face, because he had this look of sympathy. And it's almost like he almost did like a head nod, like I get it, because I just kind of I was frozen. And he almost does like a head nod, like I understand. And I'm like, are we going in for a handshake? Are we going in for a hug? And I'm like, I'm headed to the other bench. I just turned around and walked off. And another reason for that,
up though, do what? Been intimate with this guy. Was there anything there? Was there any love left?
No, there was a sick pit in my stomach. And, I hadn't seen him in 4 years, but he'd been through so much in those 4 years, not just with me, but with everything else. And, there's this leaked laptop, and his father's running for president. And
what was on that laptop?
Scandal place. Now you're trying to get me to go to prison.
Everybody wants to know that, though. When I said I was interviewing you, people are like, what's on the laptop? I mean, I'm sure you get that.
Well, I think everybody pretty much knows, isn't it all public knowledge, apparently? But actually seeing him and him not looking nothing like the person he was 4 years ago. He looked like an empty shell of a person.
Wow, he's been through it.
Yes, and I talk about, in court that day, I can't really talk about what happened because I was so zoned out, but I could tell you how many little granules were in the wood grain that day, because I was just sitting there counting them. I couldn't stop looking at the bench because I couldn't stop thinking. I pitied him in that moment. And this guy that I had hated and resented, had been furious with for everything that he had done and drug me through publicly, I pitied him. I felt sorry for him. And after court, when we were dismissed, I got up and I was just jetted out of there. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. There's not a manual for that. And I walked into this room with my family, and I realized not only did I pity him, my sister and my aunts and everybody were standing there, and they were like, I just wanted to hug him. And I was like, this man that we've hated for what he's done to Navy, we pitied and we just wanted to hug, because it's not just because he's missed out on so much and this incredible human that, he's a part of. It's also everything that he's been through, the scandal-plagued son, and there's so much. And you have to have some form of sympathy for, a person like that.
Losing his mom, losing his sister, losing his brother. I mean, that is
so much. And
a lot.
That's another reason that I felt like God put me in this position, because most women wouldn't have given him the grace that I have.
It's
and the
true
forgiveness that I have. And I can truly say, that I forgive him, and I have tried to give all the grace in the world to him, because I've seen him in his darkest time of his life. And that's something I would never wish on anyone. And I empathized, I've sympathized, and I loved him through it. And I'll always care for him and wish the absolute best. And that's the grace that, I'm willing to give him.
Well, I hope that God blesses you and gives you incredible grace and forgiveness back, because not everybody can forgive like that. I certainly struggle with that myself, like in forgiving people.
It's hard. I've grown up a lot. I've grown up a lot, because I can also say that 10 years ago, I don't think I would have given this grace. But I think that, we're put in certain situations that encourage us to grow, and wouldn't even say encourage, make us grow, and all this entire process has been one of them. It's been an entire healing journey. And, you talked about the hug in court. We didn't speak in court that day, but even after, my family had told me, I feel like you should have just went up to him, hugged him, and said, Hunter, let's fix this. And
let's work this out.
Fixed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And depositions. So weeks later, when we go to depositions and I show up with that box from Navy, and I sit down, and my attorney asked him, the questions that I wanted him to answer. And after that, I'm like, okay, well, can I get up and leave? And I messaged the attorney sitting next to me. I'm like, can I go now? This is all good. Now we're talking about finances. And I can't tell you what any of, the financial documents or anything he turned in. I never looked at them. And people think, that this gold digger that took him for his money. The only thing I wanted from the entire situation, the paternity suit, was accountability. I wanted him to be accountable for his child. I wanted him to take accountability, responsibility, and own up to the lies that had been shed. And after that, everything else was in my attorney's hands. I let him just, go to war for me and my daughter and do whatever he felt was best. But at one point, Hunter kind of stops and said, would you be opposed to speaking with me and you speaking like this? This is toxic. This is why. And I said, okay, yeah, I would. And it was then where, his attorneys take him into a room, and I'm in the room with my attorneys. My attorneys are like, do not agree to anything. Hear him out, but do not agree to anything. Go in there with an open mind, but keep it closed. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And so I walk out of this room, and his attorneys are holding the door open for me to go into another room that they have for just Hunter. And I'm walking past all these Secret Service agents that, are lined up down the hallways, and they're all just, staring. And I walk past them, and I walk into the room, and the attorneys shut the door, and it's just me and Hunter in this room. First time we'd been alone in a room since I was pregnant. And so, I look at him, I don't know what to think. You don't know what to think in that moment. And I'm still kind of mad that I handed you this box and you just put it on the shelf behind you and didn't open it up. And he just embraces me in a hug. And I think I let my guard down, a lot of emotions that, I had held, especially that resentment and that hurt and that anger. And I told him, I said, Hunter, I've hated you. That was one of the first things I had said. I said, I've hated you for years now. I said, you have a little girl that prays for you every night. You have a little girl that gets maps, puzzle maps, so she can count the states between where she is and where you are. Because my excuse to her, and the reason you never see her, is because you're busy and you live so far away. And she counts these states and hopes that someday you pass through Arkansas. And here you are sitting in Arkansas today. And, I couldn't tell my daughter that. Because how do I tell my daughter that, yes, your father was in Arkansas, the same father that I say lives too far away and that's why I can't see you. And yes, he was in Arkansas today to fight me over your child support and supporting you financially. Like it's tough. And
how could that not hurt him?
I don't know. And, I sit there and he and I both in that moment,
I bet it did.
We both shed tears and we both cried and we both laughed too. He went and got the box. He had the box brought to him and we went through it together, and there were some funny pictures that we laughed at. He laughed at the orange potato head, and I was like, now that I'm in person, I can explain to you why I wrote this. And he laughed, he thought it was funny, but he put his finger in my face and with tears rolling down his face, he said, if you don't think that I've not lived with guilt and remorse and hurt every single day that child's been on this earth, that I haven't been in her life, then you never knew me. And I said, you're right, Hunter. I never thought that it didn't bother you. I always knew you had a heart, and I always knew somehow it hurt you in some way. Because I'll never forget when I was pregnant and he was crying, talking about how could I have a child and not be in its life? How could I have a child out there that is half of me and part of me and not be in its life? Because I had told him that I was going to come to Arkansas and just raise this baby. And that was the plan. Because I loved him. I didn't want to be another scandal. I wanted to keep it private and I wanted to do my own thing, despite the rumors that are going around town of, she doesn't know who the child's father is, or it's this NBA player, or my favorite, it's Donald Trump Jr. So I was like, oh, they're getting close.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. The rumors were crazy. And I dealt with all of it. My family.
How did you get back up from that? Did your dad teach you to be confident? Was that part of the hunting training?
No, I don't know. And that's something
that takes incredible strength to keep getting back up.
It did, especially during the pregnancy, because all of that was piling on me, along with the unknown. Is he ever going to show up? I know that his dad's going to run for president. Is he going to win? Am I carrying a first grandchild? It's so, and if I am, it'll come to light, but it'll have to, it all has to come to light, because people investigate and go through and they'll have conspiracies and they'll find every bit of dirt they can. And then there's a lab.
We're seeing that right now.
Yeah, there's a laptop that's leaked and it's like, oh my gosh, this is. So, I had to do the right thing, and I had to step up and file paternity, not for fame, not for clout, not for anything other than my daughter. And I wanted to do it before someone else felt it was their story to tell, because it wasn't. It was, it was mine. And I didn't want anyone else. I didn't want, Joe and Trump to be in this debate and Trump say, well, what about the grandchild that you don't even know about that lives in Arkansas? And Joe just be completely blindsided. That's not fair. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to Hunter. It's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to Navy. And so I wanted to go about things in the way that I felt was best. And I don't have regrets when it comes to that. I feel like I tried my best. Before the paternity suit was filed, I even donated to Biden's campaign so I could send a message. Please reach out to me. I have information regarding your son. I need to speak to somebody, because I did not want it to be a scandal. And I also knew that if I was somehow able to reach them and they knew the situation, they could help not make it a scandal. They could help They could
get their publicist to handle it the proper way.
Yes. And so
I make everything else disappear.
Yeah. And that's all I wanted. And that's it. But it seemed like everything that I tried, I just continuously got slapped in the face. So it never worked out.
Wow. Well, I am glad actually that you got to tell your own story. I am curious, how many times you had to edit, or is there anything that maybe you didn't include? Is there a second book coming?
So many people have asked that. It's crazy. But I'll say this, so I had two ghostwriters, Aaron and Josh, and main reason for that is, one, I didn't know how this whole book process went. I also had to do this in a span of 6 months. When I decided I was ready to do it, I did it. And it takes time. It takes healing. Now I'm at a point where I felt like I'm able to talk about my story. These are things that I'm mentioning in this book that I've never told anyone before. And so it's hard to write about, but you don't realize how harder it is to talk about. You know, one of my first interviews was Megyn Kelly, and my editors and stuff called me after, and they're like, you just seem so numb. And I'm like, I don't know how to I don't know how to talk about it without like putting this guard up, because I hadn't talked about it yet. So there were so many stories there were so many stories and everything that I had to get in chronological order and write out and put what stories go to what chapter and how it all happened. And so I had to have these ghostwriters help me organize all of this. And I think there was 125,000 words that I had written, and we're only allowed to publish like 80 something thousand. So there was a lot of cutting, but it was nothing that, you know, I felt like I needed to hold back or anything. It was just like, what's the most important things to put in here to get what point across that I'm trying to. And that's, you know, like I've mentioned, like the mental health, the being a mother, the loving him, our relationship. It's just several things like that. But someone's asked me in an interview before, like, do you remember any of the stories that were cut? And I was like, not really. No. And I'm sure that my editor probably had written them down for me somewhere where I would be able to speak about one in an interview, but none just like come to mind.
That's interesting. It's funny too, because you said your dad's like been on TV and that he's very known in the hunting world. Like, do you think maybe you and your dad would like a reality show?
We've actually been approached with that. And if you know my dad's personality, you would understand completely why. But yeah, you know, I think we could be like the duck dynasties of the world, except dad's personality is one of a kind. And he has a social media network with quite a big following for Rob Roberts Custom Gun Works, and they laugh at the crazy stuff he says. I mean, and the craziest stuff happens to us. Like last year, we're going duck hunting, right? And it's cold outside, so you expect we get off the Can-Am, the water, we're in our bibs, and the water's like up to past our waist, and wading through there with our shotguns in the trees, and it looks like a swamp, the area that we're duck hunting, trying to set this up for you. And I'm like wading through, and Dad's like looking, he's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, you don't think we'll see like a gator or a snake or something, do you? Like, I'm kind of scared. We're in a pretty sketchy little area right here. And he's like, you ain't gonna see no snakes or gators. He said, it's too cold outside. The gators ain't gonna bother you. And the snakes, you know, they're too cold. They're gone somewhere and in a hole somewhere or whatever he said. And I was like, okay, well, it gave me a little bit of confidence. He's like, you go stand by that tree. I'll stand by this one. It's okay. I walk over and I go and I prop up on this tree. And there is a water moccasin, a cottonmouth snake looking me right in the eye. And I was like, Dad, I was like, you told me. I'm like, run. I'm like getting through this water. I don't care if the shotgun gets wet. There's a cottonmouth right here. And I'm like, and he's just like in the tree branches, just like winded in, looking at me on the same tree that I was leaned up on. He's like at face level. I was like, Dad. He's like, well, holy shit. I wasn't expecting that. And I'm like, oh my God, I almost died. I could have died. Like that's a water moccasin. That's a poisonous snake. And they're venomous, and he shot it, of course, and we didn't have to worry about it. But the rest of the time, I was like, I'm getting in the boat. I'll be sitting in the boat with my gun that's probably wet now. I'll be shooting out water logs. But it's like the craziest things happen to us. Another time we went duck hunting, and I was like walking through, and I always try to tell my dad something like he doesn't know about the woods and stuff, which is like unheard of because he knows everything when it comes to hunting and animals and the outdoors. And so we're walking through, and I said, Dad, I was like, you smell that? He's like, it smells like grass. I was like, no, that cucumber smell, that scent. And he's like, yeah. I said, that's supposed to mean that there's like baby cottonmouths or copperheads around. Like baby cottonmouths and copperheads give off that scent. I was like, they have a green tail. Dad's like, no, they don't. And he's laughing at me. 2 more steps, and I grab him. I was like, Dad. And he almost stepped on them. There were baby cottonmouths or copperheads. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was cottonmouths at the time. Right there, right by the water where he was fixing a step. There was, Dad's like, how did this happen to us? It's the
God
thing. We've had some crazy adventures for sure. It would be entertaining to say the least.
What was it like moving back home and kind of like needing your parents again, like as an adult? Was that hard?
Very hard. very hard because, once you're out living on your own, making your own rules, it's hard to come back home and live under someone else's roof with their rules. And also, I'd kind of gotten away from the small town drama and stuff, and I come back and I'm pregnant. Now I'm the center of all the small town drama and all the gossip. And, they're in the local dentist office discussing it, or the local hair salon talking about it and making up the craziest rumors. That it was really hard. That was probably the hardest time of my life, was moving back.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you've kind of gotten to have heart to heart or like special time with your folks now, though? Like, have you found beauty in it?
Oh, yeah. Because, there's nothing greater than having a child and watching your parents be grandparents to that child, because I don't know who they are as grandparents, because those aren't the people that raised me. That's what people say, is it different when your parents are raising you from when they're helping raise your children? I said, absolutely. I can assure you, my mother never hugged me, applauded me, and kissed me for finishing a plate of noodles growing up, but she will my daughter. Like, she'll, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, what? You used to tell me I ate too much. I need to cut back on it. But no, we don't do that when it comes to grandkids. We've got toys all over the house. We don't care. So, yeah, I've found the beauty in it. You have to.
That's amazing. And I know that your daughter had a little bit of a chapter with Hunter. Can you talk just a little bit about that? And I know you believe in God and like in God's time and all of that, but do you believe that will kind of flourish and come back?
Their relationship?
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope that the void that she's missing is filled. I do hope that, whether it's a Zoom call or anything, I hope someday she gets answers. And I hope someday she never questions her worth because he didn't step in and do the right thing. And all I can do is, give her extra love on my end and let her know just how great she is, and raise her around people that love her and support her and encourage her. And it's what I try to do. My family goes above and beyond for her, especially my dad. He steps in and thinks that, she's the only granddaughter. So that makes it 10 times worse, because my sister has these boys, 3 boys, and then there's Navy, who's just like thrown in the mix. So she has these 3 boys that are constantly protective over her. And then my dad that's protective over her pappy. And so, I can hope, a part of me hopes that, somehow they'll maintain some bond or something for her sake. Whatever it is that she desires, I hope that's filled for her. But I know that it'll work out. Whether he does or he doesn't, it'll work out. And I know Navy will be just fine. And I have total faith in that. If he doesn't, she'll be better because of it. And if he does, then she'll be better because of it. Either way.
That's incredible faith.
That's all we got. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I like to rely on that faith. And I want to instill that in her. And I can't do that unless I maintain it myself. So I just you get to a point where when you start expecting things and hoping things turn out a certain way, which I've done religiously throughout the book, hoping that this would happen, and then it didn't, and then hoping that, okay, well, this will happen, and it doesn't. And so you get to a point where that hope just you don't hope anymore. You just know that things will work out. And at the end of the day, you got to have that faith that no matter how they turn out, it's how it's supposed to, and you'll be better because of it. You'll get through it.
See, I feel like you accomplished so much. Like, you went to court, you got the paternity test, you did get payments, you did get your daughter on with her father. Those are incredible feats that you accomplished. So you're saying there were things that you wanted to happen that didn't. I'm like, dude, look at all that you did do.
And you're right. I get that. I see that. But
you're like, I could have climbed higher.
I feel like that's, human. Everybody thinks that. I could have fought harder. Could I have done something more for my daughter? But at the end of the day, my daughter may have, for example, met her father in person. Maybe she's never been able to have a hug that she's wanted for so long from her father, but she spoke to him before. And that wouldn't have happened had I not fought for that. And now, she's been able to have a conversation. She can say, I've spoke to my dad before. Because, there was an instance where before Navy had spoke to Hunter, a little girl was, playing house, and they were just around playing house and being girls and kids and 4, 5, 6-year-olds. And she grabs the phone, this little girl, and she's like, yes, is this Hunter Biden? Well, don't ever call Navy. You won't like her. She's a baby. And like start saying all this, girls can be mean. And absolutely broke Navy's heart. She was just, you couldn't console her, and I'm like, first of all, it's a fake phone. Let's establish this. I know you're playing out. It's a fake phone. That conversation didn't happen.
Oh my God, though. How heart-wrenching.
Mortified. Yeah. Oh.
What a mean freaking thing to say. You're not welcome to my house anymore.
It was pretty mean, but I have to teach Navy to be stronger than that. And
yes, that's
it's
true.
A fake phone. You got to have tough skin. You were brought in this world to have tough skin. I truly believe it. Now's the time we show it. Okay. I was like, and if anybody in this house has his number to call him, it would be me, and I can assure you, I'm not calling him and saying those things. I was like, Navy, your father loves you, and he loves you so much from afar, whether he talks to you, whether he sees you, no matter what, you are loved, and always know that. And I instill that in her. Even when I want to say the worst things about him, I won't, not especially to her, especially not to her. And she understood by the end of it, and I let Hunter know that it had happened. And Hunter immediately scheduled, like, can I Zoom her? And I said, yes, you can. And he Zoomed Navy, and he's like, Navy, even if you want to send me an audio message, or if you want to call me, like, don't ever hesitate. Like, know that, I love you, and we're working this out, and hopefully I'll get to see you soon. He stepped up in that moment and made that time, better for her. So I like to think that even if I didn't get him to meet in person, even if I didn't get her this father figure that's there and present, I did fight to where at least someday, she can say she did have a relationship, or he did speak to her. She's spoken to him before. Even if it's the smallest thing, it wouldn't have happened had I not fought for that.
I don't understand why he won't come see her ever.
Yeah, I don't either.
That is so weird.
I truly don't. And apparently I think it's blamed on me and the toxic litigation that, I've brought forth. But, if you can't see that I'm fighting for our daughter, then, however his perception of it is his perception. It's kind of like the book, it's his perception. And I had years to process his book. And so, I give him grace and time to process mine.
Hell yeah. Well, let people know how they can find your book.
It is available on Amazon, and it's also available, I hear, anywhere books are sold, like Barnes and Noble and places like that. So
thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to ask my dad, or you need any daddy advice? It sounds like you have a good relationship with your own.
I do. I'm fortunate enough to have a very influential father in my life. And you can't blame me for hoping that Navy would have that too.
I love that.
You've heard from my mom. Now, let's switch it over to Grandpa.
We had Lunden Roberts for episode 400, Dad. This is crazy.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it was a very heartfelt message that she gave. And the first thing that came to my mind was searching for love, and is there any wrong place? Or, in other words, you can find love and you search for love wherever it might be. And here's a girl from Arkansas that's had a very beautiful relationship with her father, exciting trips and one-on-one trips into the woods and with the animals and snakes, and really a very popular fella in town, has even done some of his own shows and not afraid to give a commercial. So he's very outgoing. And here's a daughter that's also very outgoing, but in a small space. She decides to move to Washington, D.C., a land of excitement, she thinks, something big, something bright, something that could be wild and crazy. It's like she went to Candyland, because there's plenty of candy in Candyland. And unfortunately, the morality, the partying, the dancing, in many ways, as you might imagine, it gets a hold of you and it gets intoxicated, and the parties and the drinking and the drugs and trying to fit in with everybody and trying to be cool, it can get away from anybody. When you're young, you think you're invincible and you can do and try anything and nothing will happen to you. And the sad part of the story is that the bad guy isn't necessarily Hunter Biden. Here's a person who's also has the same issue, searching for love. Hunter meets Lunden at a party. Beautiful girl on the outside, but she's a beautiful girl on the inside. And someone that he was able to relate to. She was able to comfort him. And obviously, there was a connection there. I definitely think it was two-sided, not one-sided. And they had a relationship. And what can happen in a relationship, especially if there's no protection being done downstairs, the baby...
You knew about this.
Yeah, I certainly, because I did it too. Well, the point is that Hunter met Lunden, and it was mutual passion and love that created maybe. It's the two of them. You were made the same way. And then, of course, when something like that happens, and what's the next step? Well, in my case, I found being with a sweet little girl, and I've impregnated with Reena Joy, that we took you on the honeymoon and made a life together and made a family life and a commitment, because not only do you owe a legacy to your children and that love and attention, but I also felt obligated to do it with the girl that took me to the dance as well. And you have to be, you've heard this line, you got to man up. You have to be responsible for your actions, even though it might not be 100% planned or what you would have desired it to have been at the time. And the truth of the matter is that my mom said about Reena Joy is that she was thrilled about it. She says that beautiful children that she has for grandchildren, all of them, but especially my Reena Joy, what a gift from God. What a miracle. What a wonderful opportunity to have a beautiful grandchild, and has also now given her the blessing of 4 beautiful great-grandchildren. So depends how you look at things in life. And this young lady, Lunden, through this wild streak, she came home, had to swallow her pride, but went back to taking her chapter in Washington and realized that things might not have gone exactly the way they were planned. But look at this beautiful girl that I got out of it, where I have the privilege to be the best that I can be, because I have such a beautiful daughter that is an extension of me, and she's also an extension of Hunter, and he should. And we don't know exactly what's going through his mind, but he certainly is missing out on also a great blessing. And let's hope that he can figure it out before it's too late.
And not only him, but also his dad.
The rest of the Bidens. That's right. And the kind of sympathy and caring that she demonstrated in this interview shows that she's not only not angry, even though she thought she hated him for a while, but it's just not that. It was just that he it's like leaving someone at the altar, But the fact is that she puts herself to the side because she thinks the most important thing is for her daughter to have a relationship with her father, and that the father should step up and want to have a relationship and to be accountable for her needs. So I tip my hat off to her, because she gave you a beautiful, heartfelt message, and all she really wants in return is to be able to be a mother, a caring mother, and to be able to use the wild experiences that she had into being a better person back in Arkansas, okay? And that she can have a beautiful life, really, wherever she goes.
Thanks for listening. Now I think I'm going to go call my dad.
I'll say goodbye and see you the next time.
Thanks for listening to the Better Call Daddy Show. Join us weekly for new episodes and more daddy wisdom.
Better Call Daddy is good advice always.
And love you, Grandpa, and love you, Mommy.
That's so cute. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You can also find special episodes on my YouTube channel, and you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Alexa,
On Good Pods.
or your preferred podcatcher. That's a wrap for now.